Good morning. Live long and prosper. Live long and prosper. Good morning, everybody in class and Zoomers.
What does that mean?
Actually, I'm doing this because it means in Star Trek, live long and prosper. But I'm doing it because today we are talking about world religions. And actually, this comes from a Jewish sign that was used in the temple. And you'll see it in my presentation today. And Leonard Nimoy of Star Trek was a Jew and used this in the Jewish greeting. So he brought it forward into Star Trek. So it's kind of a funny thing. But today we're going to talk about world religions. I thought it would be fun to talk a little, just to review some of the basics of world religions. And we have folks in here who, of course, have friends in the different religions, and we should mingle with the different religions. And so it's a good opportunity to just review a few of the basics. So I want to hear your stories today too. But first, of course, our usual announcements. Zoomers, please mute yourself in the lower left corner of your screen if you haven't already. So we keep the background noise down, and we want to welcome all of you, Joe and Susan and Jim and Stephanie Moen. You're looking good, Stephanie. Yes. Okay. Look, you got a haircut. All right. And we are going to have a couple announcements here too. We have a class party coming up September 1st on Thursday for anybody who wants to come. And we're going to have games and food. And this is a sign-up sheet I'm passing around for food. And it's going to be here in the church. Just kind of a summer get-together. Thank you, Alice and Vicki, for putting that on. And if you haven't heard the sermon today, it's really cute. It has a funny opening. You know, I want to go back and see it. Rev Jerry says that someone important died in the church and his name was Mr. Somebody Else. And that everybody, when something needed to be done in the church, they would turn to somebody else. And he would always do things. And so it was a cute presentation about how we all have to help out and just don't rely on somebody else.
I think it was Mrs. Somebody.
Yeah,
Mrs.
exactly.
Somebody. Joyce. That's right.
That was my birthday. August 1st.
August 1st.
So she's
Okay.
somebody else.
Oh, no.
Yes, that was my birthday.
So it's really an energetic sermon too. I encourage you to go back and see it if you didn't see it today. Funny and meaningful. Okay.
Don't worry.
Anything else to announce today? Summer's going good for everybody?
Well,
Cool? Yes.
Dr. Bob has a good fish story he was sharing with me a few minutes ago.
Dr.
Tell him
Bob,
about the salmon.
he came back from Alaska. He was fishing in Alaska.
fishing in Alaska with my grandson from Nashville, and we fished for 3 days and shipped home 80 pounds.
Coming over.
A bunch of king salmon. They were wild.
And you can bring a fish to our party. Are we having a salmon day?
I love salmon.
I do.
That's right. Great. Okay. All right, let's jump in and talk a little about other religions here. Zoomers, can you see the screen? Screen sharing here?
Steve?
Jim, do you see the presentation on the screen?
Yes, I wanted to tell you that I just returned from a motor trip to Michigan. Jane's sister died in January, and we went back there for a memorial service. But returning home Wednesday, we both tested positive for, and we're in isolation at home. I thought at my age, if I got COVID, it would surely do me in, but it hasn't. Yeah.
Good, you hang in there. We know it's still around, obviously. Yep, okay. Say hi to Jane for us if she's there.
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna go kind of quick through this, just kind of basics on some of the major religions, what they believe and what they practice. And you all that know me know well, correct me if you see that I'm wrong too. Here are some of the symbols of the various religions: Christianity, Buddhism, Islam, and Shinto, and they all, of course, rely on their symbols when they do anything. Here is a Pew Research chart, size of the major religious groups, and this is what we'll cover today also. Christians, 31% of the population, 23% worldwide of Muslims, and growing. They will overtake us, and we will talk about that a little bit because Muslim families are growing so much faster than Christian families. Unaffiliated, 16%, includes those who have no religious interest or just call themselves spiritual and not religious. 15% Hindus in India, 7% Buddhist, about 6% are folk religionists. That includes like American Indian spirituality, those kind of things that don't fall into one of the major categories. And then other religions. And then at the very smallest group is the Jewish religion, 0.2% worldwide. They get a lot of attention, of course, but they are very few in number. Yes, they are still there.
It could be something to do with the fact that they have been wiped out by several different civilizations.
Yes, probably that too.
Concerted effort to lower their numbers.
Yes, the concerted effort to lower their numbers was successful. Okay, and briefly here too, I want to show you, I thought this was a very interesting chart that I found. I think this is a couple years old. I didn't have the place that I found it, but look at how detailed this is. Starting over looking at Canada, mostly Protestant in Canada, if that's correct, Susan, you can tell us. And then Roman Catholic over here on the sides and in the upper northeast of Canada, and America being mostly Protestant, but these places in the blue, if you can see that, and then mostly Roman Catholic down through Latin America into South America, but also some Hindu in these regions of South America, also in this purple. And then up here, Eastern Orthodox in Greenland, and over here above Russia, and then throughout Europe, a lot of Eastern Orthodox.
What's Russia mostly? I can't remember.
Eastern Orthodox.
Eastern.
Yes. Eastern Orthodox.
What is China?
China would be over here. Buddhism. See where my cursor is now? Buddhism over here with China. And the green over here, Chinese religions. Different Chinese religions there. Hinduism here, that would be India. Over here. Middle East, Sunni and Shia. Those of us that know, Sunni is the green, Shia is the red. So a lot more area of Sunni than there is Shia. And that extends over into, of course, Egypt and North Africa. Sunni Muslims in the upper North Africa, and then lower is purple is
Tribal, Christian and Muslim.
Yeah, South
Tribal
America
and
is the
Islam.
same, that's a tribal and Christian.
And then South Africa looks like mostly Protestant, the very bottom, and then over Australia, mostly Protestant. Protestant also. But what a good way to look at the colors as they fill in with the different religions. Shows
Is there
what
not a concentration of the Jewish population anywhere up there? I don't see it. Or is it just too small?
it's white, white here. It's just too small to really show
There
up.
it is. You
Here's
can
one
see.
right here.
Oh, I see.
Down.
Yeah, okay.
No, down,
Right, yeah, right
there.
right there.
Uh-huh, yeah. A couple places, but not much compared to the others. Just not that many. So, interesting. Okay, Christian symbols. We have a lot of Christian symbols. We could do a whole class on that, of course. But let me just tell you a little bit about what Wikipedia summarizes things pretty well. Let me tell you how they summarize the Christian religion. They say Christians are principally monotheistic. The divine Godhead, it consists of three parts: the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. The essence of Christianity revolves around the life, death, and beliefs of a man named Jesus from Nazareth. Christians believe God sent his Son, the Messiah, to save the world, and they contend that Jesus will return to earth again in what's known as the second coming. Interesting way to try to summarize all of Christian beliefs in one paragraph, for example. Both Christians and Jews follow the Old Testament of the Bible, but Christians embrace more closely the New Testament. Christianity is split broadly into three branches: Catholics, Protestants, and Eastern Orthodox. Eastern Orthodox make up the smallest number. The Catholic branch is governed by the Pope, Catholic bishops. The Orthodox Eastern branch is split into independent units, and there is no central governing structure for them. There are numerous denominations within the Protestant denominations, but there is also no central governing structure among them. Depending on the specific denomination, Christian practices are baptism, Holy Communion, prayer, confession, burial rites, and marital rites. A bishop, Catholic bishop, said last year in an interview that for the first time in history, Catholics are no longer the highest individual number of believers in the world. Muslims have overtaken us. Catholics now account for 17% of the world population. Muslims are at 19%. And this is because Muslim families continue to make a lot of children. Christian ones are have fewer and fewer, although parts of Africa and Asia are exceptions. But he said that's the reason why is Muslim families are having many more children than Christian families. By 2050, Christians will remain the largest group at 30.7%, but Islam will grow faster soon after that and overtake the total number of Christians in the world.
Steve, do you know if Christians also includes Church of Latter-day Saints?
I would think it does, yeah, because they are, they're a different belief system. They still fall under
Yeah.
Christianity in
So they
general.
Mormon?
The
Yes,
Mormons,
yes.
yes. So Christians are about 31%, and then Muslims are 24% worldwide, close behind us and coming up to overtake. And I'll bet everybody knows the 5 pillars of Islam generally.
Sure.
Or have heard about them. The Declaration of Faith, obligatory prayer 5 times a day, compulsory giving, fasting in the month of Ramadan, and their pilgrimage to Mecca.
Is that both Sunni and Shia?
Yes, that's what Wikipedia says. The 5 pillars include the Declaration of Faith. This is called a fundamental statement of faith, which Muslims have to recite. There is no God but God, Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. This distinguishes Muslims from those of other faiths. This declaration is perhaps best known in the West as the Arabic phrase on the flag of ISIS and other offshoots. But this is by no means an endorsement of violent groups, but it is used as standard across the Muslim faith. The ritual prayer is called Salah and is performed in the direction of Mecca 5 times a day. Friday is set aside as the day for congregational prayer, when large numbers of Muslims will gather for communal prayer, and has frequently been exploited when bombings were done intentionally to attack enemies when they are gathered. The term zakat is used for the obligatory donation of a portion of a Muslim's surplus wealth. Islamic charities encourage donors to use their services to relieve suffering, to help refugees, the urban poor, and those in conflict areas. And Muslims are also expected to fast during Ramadan, the 9th month of the calendar. They fast during daylight hours. They abstain from food, drink, sexual activity, smoking, and then they break the fast with a meal after sunset. There are exceptions for those who are elderly, pregnant, breastfeeding, and for children. So those are.
And yet Islam and Christianity both trace their history back to Abraham. So, you know, I've wondered or struggled with the idea, how could we have ended up so different? Any words of wisdom there, Steve?
Well, what is the Bible story? Abraham and
Tribes.
Ishmael
Ishmael and
Isaac.
and Isaac,
and
yes.
Isaac. Yes. Yeah, they were brothers, but
Yeah.
Isaac was sent
Different
away.
tribes, were they
And,
different tribes? They were really different
Well,
tribes.
Ishmael is born of a, not of Sarah.
No,
Not a
right.
She
She
was
was
born of the slave or the
slave woman,
servant.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's the slave woman. Remember,
So-
his
and he
wife,
was-
Sarah said, I'm not gonna have any
Yeah.
children, take
Yeah.
my slave woman, and that was Ishmael. And then they got in the battle, that Sarah and the slave woman, they got to fighting, and so Abraham
Tamar.
sent her off. with
Sent her
Ishmael.
off and the
Ishmael
child.
is supposedly where is.
Hagar.
So the bad feeling right from the start there.
Then they
Yeah.
go on to have another child, didn't they? Abraham and Sarah?
Yeah, they did have, and that was where the.
Yeah,
fight
they had
was
Isaac.
Between,
Yeah.
yeah, Isaac and Ishmael, that was the fight there.
Well, I mean, after them, didn't they?
No, I think that was it.
That was it.
Sorry, she was like 19.
And yeah, I'd love to hear your stories too about friends that you have or interactions with folks who are of these different faiths, because it helps us learn. Okay.
Is our
Better
Afghan?
call my wife first, Judy, and then I'll call my.
Is our wife? Is our wife? Is our Afghan family just this, or are they Muslim?
They're Muslim.
Okay, which is Islam?
This is Islam. Uh-huh.
Will you tell the story of when you took them to the temple? This is interesting.
Sure, quick story. Our church, as you all know, probably sponsors an Afghan family from Afghanistan since last fall. And they came to Denver, and we are helping them still get acclimated to life in America. And so I went one Friday and took the father and the boys to the mosque
Or men only.
in Aurora.
No women.
Well,
No,
when we
we're
got,
separate. Women are upstairs
yeah,
in
they-
that mosque. The women are upstairs, the men are downstairs.
yeah, so, and I didn't know that till I got there and went into the mosque, and there's a door for women and there's a door for men, and there is a divider, and the women get down and pray on one side and the men get down and pray on the other side. And so I brought our family, the men that I took that day, in, and I sat in the back, and the imam said, "Want to welcome Mr. Steve and thank him for bringing these new folks to us today." And I thought that was wonderful. And he started in with his prayers and sermon, and the sermon was, we want to bless everyone that is part of our congregation, and we ask God to destroy our enemies. That's different than my church. So I didn't quite hear what happened after that. Focused on that, and then I finally came back to it, and it was pretty normal after with the rest of that about the blessings of God, how great God is, and so I never did find out exactly who they defined as their enemies.
Nobody turned around and looked at you.
Nobody looked at me. Being an infidel, and I was glad for that. So it was an education for me. So that was my first introduction to mosque directly. Judy, go ahead.
Well, I've been sort of introduced to different cultures and different religions through my sons, who are very adventurous. My older son was needed to take a summer course at CSU in engineering. It was differential equations or something. It was one of the most difficult math courses. And so we took him there, and we went to the dorm room with them, and it was a summer semester, really hot. And his roommate, his side of the room was immaculate. And then I realized when I met him, he was from Saudi Arabia. And so I thought, this is going to be interesting, because my son is wearing a cowboy hat, playing the guitar, and he's kind of, he thought he was going to party his way through college, but we set him straight. So he called me and said, it's 4th of July is Ma'an's birthday. And I said, well, and he said, I said, you're coming home, aren't you? And he said, can I bring Ma'an with me? And I said, certainly. So here comes Ma'an and Michael. But let me back up. We went to visit them in the dorm room again, and it was totally different. My son somehow managed to corrupt Ma'an. And Ma'an was dressed in Western style, and the whole room was rearranged. It was messy and everything. So they came together, and I put a big banner up on the fireplace. Well, happy birthday, Ma'an. And Ma'an was very nervous. He was scared to death. He sat there like this, and he says, I want you to know that I believe in Christianity. And I said, wait a minute, Ma'an. I said, you can believe whatever you want to believe. Practice your faith in this house as long as you're here, because he was there for the weekend. And so I know that they have prayer several times a day. So I even reminded him of his prayer time. And he said, oh, good. So he runs upstairs, he puts on this long robe, and he stretches out on the sofa, and he's got every light on in the house. Then he goes in the living room and he starts banging on the piano. And I said, well, that's fine. But it was interesting. Then he sat down and he told me how strict his father was, that he must become an engineer. And his father was in the oil industry, that he must become a successful engineer and then return to Saudi Arabia. And he was learning the Western culture. It was quite an experience. But I thought it was interesting how he felt that he had to pretend that he, believed in Christianity, and he was frightened. And so when I told him that, you can believe whatever you believe and practice your faith in this house, and then he was just like totally free.
Well, just imagine what it's like to come to a different country that's majority
Yes.
a different religion than yours. Yes. Just a quick story too about our Afghan family who are Muslim. When they came here last fall, we furnished their apartment, couch and tables and things. And a month afterwards, they removed the couch. They put pillows on the floor and their rugs and made it their own.
And even their dining room, they took out the dining room table.
No, I think they left
Oh,
it.
they left still there.
Yeah, it's left there.
They don't use it.
That is how they assimilate. Okay, I want to get through some of these other ones. Third category, non-religious is 16%. So let's call that a category of world religions, having no religious affiliation. And when you look this up on the internet today, the no religious people, the first thing that came up for me was the term humanist. That really, the terms are changing from atheist and agnostic more toward the word humanist. And here is from humanist.com is the 10 commitment wheel that they promote, being as their beliefs: empathy, critical thinking, ethical development, peace and social justice, service and participation. What's that one at the bottom there? Altruism, humility, environmentalism, global awareness, responsibility. And so they are focused on those. Humanist today is used to mean those who seek a good life without religious or superstitious beliefs. A humanist may embrace all or most of the other approaches that religious people have. In addition, humanists believe that moral values follow from human nature and not necessarily from any spiritual origination. There are 6 categories of humanists or non-believers that have been identified today. One is intellectual atheist. And these are folks who like to debate others. Another is called the seeker. And these are ones who are unsure about the existence of God, but do not hold a firm ideological position and don't want to debate from firm positions. A third is called the ritual atheist. These are folks who do not believe in a God, but participate in traditional rituals, religious rituals like ceremonies, meditations, and holiday traditions. So they have some.
A lot of our kids, right?
Yeah, fall under that category. A researcher said, we fully expect that people today, including young people, may shift between these different types of irreligious categories during the course of their lives. People may find multiple types that resonate with them, but one should not stand out as being their primary type. This researcher and his team found that only a fraction of non-believers today use the terms atheist or agnostic, preferring other terms like non-religious, spiritual, but not religious, secular, humanist, or free thinker. So the words are changing today. Those categories. Who knows folks who fall under those categories? And who are they? Jim, who are those to you?
My kids.
Relatives? Yes.
Well, the growing segment of spiritual but not religious, very popular,
Yes,
large numbers of people.
yes. Don't
But
want
what
to
does that
follow.
mean? When they say spiritual, not religious, what does that mean?
Well, what I read, Judy, is that people who are seekers, who look for what's beyond this life, but they don't want to follow the religious beliefs or practices of a particular religion. So they're seekers, but they're not followers of a particular denomination.
They
Oh,
don't
I figured
practice
it
it.
out for them.
Uh-huh.
Well, and at some point, aren't we all seekers? At some point, we're all seekers.
We're seekers, but we are
But we
also
also have our beliefs.
religious practitioners.
And we have a granddaughter that's heading out to college this year, and I know her parents are really concerned about the influence that she's gonna have in the world when she goes out. And, but you know, I was telling Steve, she's a very level-headed, mature young lady, and she may look for her own way. You know, she may listen to outside influences and outside ideas and stuff like that, and then she'll decide you know, what it is. And to me, that's the healthiest way, you know, not necessarily to follow what, I mean, you've been born and raised in this wonderful home and very good Christian home, but you know, I think to seek and come back is better than not, you know. So I'm really proud of her for making the choices that she's made. And I think at this point in their life, they're all seekers, you know, at some point.
Especially at that age. There's so many funny graphics on the internet between the groups of religious and non-religious folks, including one that says, praise Darwin, let's evolve beyond belief. And then some Christians fight back and say, checkmate atheist. If there's no God, how come the world fits so perfectly in a chicken? So if you've ever looked at it, the world does kind of, if you took out a little of the ocean and pushed the land masses back together, it would be in the form of a chicken. So some folks think that's
What came first, the chicken or the egg?
intelligent design from the chicken. Okay, let's talk about Hindus. 15% of the population are Hindus, especially originating from India. This is one of their symbols for source of life. And here's another one, Hindu swastika. I remember in history class hearing that the Nazis took the swastika from history, probably the Hindus.
What's the difference between Hindu and Hindi?
What is the language, I believe?
Well,
You speak.
I'm not sure about that. Google, everyone.
I think yes, in case somebody has their phone.
Steve, I just wanted to share something real quickly. I
Sure.
went to a wedding and there were swastikas all over. It was the first time I'd seen that. I was like, oh, this is a different take. I'm getting married, but it was an important symbol.
Well, that's also a Native American symbol too.
Oh, is it really?
The swastika?
Yeah.
Well, they've been taken from other historical origins. Hindus believe in one all-pervasive supreme being who's transcendent, and Hindus believe in the divinity of 4 Vedas, the world's most ancient scripture. They have primordial hymns. They believe that the universe goes in endless cycles of creation, preservation, and dissolution. Hindus famously believe in karma, the law of cause and effect, in which each individual creates his own destiny by his thoughts and actions. They believe the soul reincarnates, evolving through many births until all karmas have been resolved. And this liberation is sought from the cycle of rebirth and death. Not a single soul will be deprived of this destiny. Hindus believe that divine beings exist in unseen worlds, and that temple worship, rituals, and sacraments are part of the communion with these gods. They believe that all life is sacred and to be revered, and therefore they practice non-injury in thought, word, and deed. They believe that no religion teaches the only way to salvation, but that all genuine paths are facets of God's light and are deserving of tolerance and respect. Hinduism is the world's oldest religion. It has no beginning, must have a beginning, but it precedes recorded history. It has no human founder that is known. It is a mystical religion leading the devotee to personally experience the truth and seek the truth. Their common rituals are prayer, meditation, yoga, recitation of scriptures, and reading their religious books.
Our daughter had a close friend who I guess they're still close, who's Hindu. And when she got married, evidently the wedding was unbelievable. I mean, the groom rode in on a horse, they couldn't get an elephant.
Wow.
And they had, unbelievable food and I guess gold jewelry is everywhere.
Yes.
It's just unbelievable wedding. This was about, I don't know, 15 years ago or so, but, I've always been curious Sonia is the girl's name. I would love to sit down and, you know, kind of ask her a little bit more about it, but you don't do that with a teenager too much. Yeah, it's pretty amazing pictures that
Interesting.
Beth had of her friend.
Dr. Bob, I know you have been to India. What did you experience there? Did you see a lot of that kind of thing?
Not a lot. We saw, you know, what struck me about India was overwhelming poverty.
Yeah.
Now, this was back in the 70s, so it's been a long time. I think India has changed significantly, but the worship of the animals was significant. The cobra, the monkey, even the cow. First, that's their respect for all life.
Yeah, do no harm to any living being.
So,
Yes.
See,
Okay.
I was
Yes.
in Nepal, which is half Indian, you know, kind of, they all blend together there, but we went to the ceremony where, I don't know what they call it, but where they were having a funeral. So you could, they were lined up, and then they had the bodies there, and then they'd set them on fire, and then they dump them into the river.
Oh.
And then on one side, there was like a prayer place, but we didn't go there. And there was an Aman, one of those guys who's all white. He scared me, I don't know what it was. But, so they had some really strange stuff there, but the cow is really important there, but I'll never forget that.
Yes.
Don't
Okay,
remember.
we've got about 15 minutes left. Similar, go ahead, Jim, and then I'll do Buddhism.
Two things. First of all, I just looked up the Nazi swastika goes counterclockwise as opposed to. Clockwise. And so the arms, they go up like this, they go clockwise. And Nazism.
Oh,
We went to we have some friends whose kids got married in the Hindu religion. And it was really a lot of fun, but the thing that was interesting is that they incorporated a Christian ceremony of marriage into their Hindu thing. And it was totally, it was not inconsistent. You can do that anytime you want to. You can put any other thing into a marriage ceremony and it's perfectly all right.
interesting. That is one thing I read, saw on the internet, is that today there is more changing between religions and sharing of concepts than there ever has been, and that's attributed to the internet and travel. People getting to know and communicate with people all across the world of different faiths. And so there's more changing out of one faith to another than there ever has been. Okay, related to Hinduism, of course, is Buddhism, also in India. Buddhism is 2,500 years old. Buddhists believe that human life is one of suffering, but that the goal is enlightenment, and that can be achieved in three ways: meditation, spiritual and physical labor, and good behavior. Buddhism began in 563 with Siddhartha Gautama, the first person, now known as the Buddha, but he was the first person to reach the state of enlightenment. And Buddhists do not believe in any deity or God, but they revere him as the first person to achieve the highest level of enlightenment. He was an Indian prince who spent time as a wealthy prince in his youth, and then renounced that wealth and spent time as a poor beggar in the streets, and finally settling on his understanding of life should be a middle way between extreme poverty and extreme wealth. That is the path to enlightenment, finding wisdom and the middle way of life. The place that he achieved enlightenment under a Bodhi tree is now a major Buddhist pilgrimage site. The Buddhists taught there are four noble truths: that everyone in life is suffering in some way, that suffering comes from desire, that you should detach from desire for things, and then you will reach the cessation of suffering. They believe in a wheel of rebirth where souls are born again into different bodies, depending on how you conducted your previous life. Karma. And there are two main groups of Buddhists, one called Mahayana, which emphasizes role models to follow, and the other called Theravada, which emphasizes a monastic lifestyle, imitative monastic lifestyle. So those are some of the basics. And they love beautiful temples, such as this one. And this next one is my favorite that I saw. Look at that waterfall. Like a pagoda, looks like the Japanese. Now, Buddhism is also one of the three Chinese pillars of Chinese society, along with Confucianism and Taoism. So it is very popular in China also.
Although the Chinese are trying to eliminate it, such as in Tibet.
Buddhism?
Really?
Well, in Tibet, yeah. Tibet, we talked to a number of practicing Buddhists still living in Tibet, Tibetan Buddhists.
Oh,
And the oppression from the Chinese is just unbelievable, to the point where if you are a Tibetan, you do not have a passport, so you can't get out of the country unless
Oh, my
you
goodness.
go out illegally.
didn't know that. Thank you,
That
Linda.
expected the exile of
Exactly.
the Dalai Lama.
Of the Dalai Lama. But they're still
The Dalai.
practicing, still practicing
Okay.
Buddhists, but they are very oppressed, and the Chinese are sending more and more of their citizens into the country.
All right, moving on. Let me tell you a little about folk religions. The 6% of the population, folk religions. But they are expected to grow in coming years. Folk religions are closely associated with a particular group of people or ethnicity or tribe. The examples are African tribe religions, Chinese folk religions, and Native American religions, American Indians, and Australian Aboriginal religions. They are religions typically that do not have formal creeds or sacred texts, at least not to the extent that the larger religions do. Native American religions are one particularly interesting thing to Americans because, of course, they were in the lands we are now. Until the 1950s, it was commonly assumed that Native American religions were from surviving Native Americans and were nothing more than curious anachronisms, dying remnants of these small societies. Scholars of religion and individuals committed to finding out more have found there's much more to these than was originally thought. Most Native American religions, plants and animals, clouds and mountains carry and embody revelation and the universal spirit. Even where Native tradition conceives of a realm apart from the earth and not normally visible, the boundaries between these worlds are permeable and spirits pass between earth and sky. There's no such thing as one generic Native American religion. It depends on the place and the religious practices. Different tribes have different practices. There are many creation stories and migration narratives in their beliefs. There are also moralistic stories. They told family histories orally, and their instructions are meant to teach traditional skills. They even had jokes and clowning stories that were forms of entertainment that merged with their traditional religious stories that they would tell. But underlying them all was a belief that there was a universal spirit that was in all things, plants, animals, people. So there was one basic thought.
May I tell you I'll make it as quick as
Sure.
possible, a Native American story. My ex-husband was working on the launch pad at Vandenberg Air Force Base on space shuttle. And he was supervising a number of people, and one of the people that he was supervising was Chumash Indian native woman. And this launch pad was called Space Launch Complex 6, Slick 6 at Vandenberg Air Force Base. You may have heard of it. And so they had one failure after another at that launch pad. And so years later, we went to have out to Montville, California, where we used to live. And we had dinner with a friend of mine whose husband worked for Federal Electric on the launch, on the Air Force Base on that launch pad. And he told the same story to my ex-husband. And the interesting thing about it is that these Chumash people had told them, so many people, that the very next launch that they planned, they decided that they were going to cover all their bases because they had never had a successful launch from that spot. So they decided they were going to cover all their bases, and they brought in a Chumash shaman to bless the ground. She said the reason that there was never a success is that was sacred burial ground.
Oh.
And they were trying to launch from a sacred burial ground, and that's why they weren't successful. And so they brought in a Chumash, a Native American shaman, to bless the site before the launch, and it was successful. And
Maybe.
it just,
Okay.
it just kind of gave us all chills.
Yeah. Well, it is quite interesting, and I know some of us here have great interest in Native American spirituality. Of course, there's many things on the internet, pictures, memes, as they call them. This one, the original founding fathers. They compare them to Mount Rushmore. That's Chief Joseph, Sitting Bull, Geronimo, and Red Cloud. And then one other interesting one I saw, and I didn't confirm if this is actually true, but it was an interesting quote. An Indian said, "Christian leaders stand on our soil and claim gay marriage has never occurred here. But over 130 tribes in every region of North America performed millions of same-sex marriages for hundreds of years. The whites' statements are both hateful and ignorant. Your homosexual was our two-spirit people, and we considered them sacred." So I'm sure there's a whole thing you can look up on how they saw that and how they treated those. And that reminded me of the movie Little Big Man. There is kind of a gay Indian in the movie Little Big Man that is shown as living in his own tent, and they respected him, and he was kind of a shaman or medicine man of that. So interesting. Go ahead,
I
Susie.
saw on the internet a while back that there was an Indian chief, and he was a big warrior and everything, but he was a cross dresser. So he came home and then he put on like squat clothes, but he was buried in everything. So that was totally true. I mean, and it wasn't a big deal for them,
Huh.
only for us.
Only for us.
Yeah.
Maybe so.
Some of us.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Jim.
you know, in the beginning. it was-
Yes.
As an environmentalist, a lot of people have always said that the American Indians were primitive. But one of the reasons that they stayed in an undeveloped society was that they had a tradition, and I don't know whether it's considered a religious tradition or not, but they had a tradition of making decisions based upon how it would affect the seventh generation to come. And if they could not determine that this would be beneficial to their great, whatever that is, grandchild, they wouldn't do it. They did not seek to benefit just themselves or their children. They were concerned about the welfare way down the road.
Okay, and finally, Judaism, 0.2% of those those were really small, but very visible. And here's their three symbols: the menorah, candle, 7-pointed candle. This is called the two-palmed salute of some type, and then the Star of David. And as I was telling you before, this was the two-palmed salute was taken by Leonard Nimoy for the movie Star Trek. And this is a picture of it on a Jewish temple somewhere. This distinctive two-handed symbol is sometimes found on tombstones of Jews who were members of the Cohen priestly clan, descendants of Kohanim who were descended from Moses and Aaron, and they served in the ancient temple in Jerusalem. This reflects the unique hand positioning used by Cohens in ancient times and today when they recite key blessings to the Jewish people. They continue to bless their congregation in synagogues around the world, just as their ancestors thousands of years ago did in the Holy Temple, making this ancient sign with their hands. They bless the congregation using the very same words that God told Aaron to recite soon after the Jewish departure from the slaves. May God bless you and safeguard you. May God illuminate his countenance for you and be gracious to you and lift his countenance to you and establish peace for you. A little longer than Mr. Spock usually said, but that's where it came from. Since it's customary to refrain from making this hand symbol unless one is a Cohen and actively reciting the blessing, this ancient symbol has remained rarely used and is mostly seen on Jewish tombstones, books, and in the Star Trek series. Judaism, of course, began with scrolls. This is their example of their fancy scrolls in a synagogue. And Jewish life is very much in the form of community activities. For example, the Jewish prayer book uses we and our in prayers more than it does I and mine, which other faiths do much more. Judaism is very much a family faith. Customs revolve around the home and the Sabbath meal, when families join together and welcome in a special day. Who is a Jew? Jews believe that a Jew is someone who is the child of a Jewish mother, although some groups also accept children of Jewish fathers. But traditionally, Jews are identified as coming from the mother's lineage. A Jew traditionally can't lose his or her status as a Jew by adopting into another faith. Someone who isn't born a Jew can convert to Judaism, but it is not easy to do so. Judaism means living the faith through the practices, because Jews don't only seek to obey the letter of the law, the particular details of each Jewish sect are important to those practicing and believing and regarding each of those sects. A truly religious Jew tries to bring holiness in everything they do by doing it as an act that praises God and honors everything that God has done. For such a person, their whole life becomes an act of worship, and the practices are very important. Practices include prayer and honoring their rituals and their holy days. Judaism lacks a central authority. There is no pope, such as in Catholicism, that would speak for all of the faith. Because of this, there are many different variations on the basic beliefs. Some Jews believe in an afterlife, some do not. But all of them believe in the importance of their practices and their community faith.
I don't see Susie here. She was married to a Jewish man.
Yes, remember. And of course, clothing is important to some of the different Judaism sects also. Orthodox, Reform, Hasidic Jews. So, but no central beliefs except in one God, and that the practices of your own denomination are of paramount importance.
They're required to walk to their worship service to live close enough to the synagogue that they can walk to.
I didn't know that. Interesting.
Yeah, there are folks over here at
The Orthodox.
Lincoln University, I mean, well, yeah, over in Lone Tree, you'll see them walking.
Huh.
And it's on a Saturday. I think. Yes, it is.
Very good. Zoomers, would you like to comment or question about anything, your interaction with people of different faiths? Anything in particular? What do you, one question before we go. If you grew up in a different part of the world, would you be conforming to the majority faith of that area? You think you'd be a Muslim or a Buddhist?
Yeah.
In a sense, absolutely, yes. Very few exceptions.
Sure.
I'll bet there are very few exceptions. Yeah, Gene first.
Can I do an endorsement for being United Methodist? Probably a number of you know the name Houston Smith. He wrote the book World Religions, which for many years was the classic textbook in comparative religions in universities across the country. He was an ordained United Methodist minister. His parents were missionaries in China. What made Houston Smith particularly unique was the fact that he not only studied, but he lived the practices. In other words, he went to the monastery. He went to India, became a devout Hindu. But during all of this, and being considered the world's foremost authority on world religions for many years, he died at age 97. He always remained a United Methodist, and he chose to be buried and to have a service in the Methodist Church after he died. So in my way of thinking, we're in a denomination which not only has the tenets and the values, but we have the illustration of an expert after having studied all and having lived those religions to come back to the Methodist Church. That tells us something, Steve.
That's a good point.
In this book, World Religions. World Religions.
Did his tombstone say somebody else?
No. My body I've given to the church, the Methodist Church, but my soul has gone elsewhere.
That's a nice effort. Okay,
Steve, I was
Jim,
wondering
final comment.
if in your studying for the class, if there was anything, you ran across anything that would had anything about trend lines, which religions were growing and which ones were shrinking, and most especially the nuns, not the NUN, but the NONE.
Yes.
Nuns, because that's what I have heard, that the nuns are growing, and other than the Mormons and
Yes.
everything like that.
We know generally the Muslims and the nuns are growing.
And the
Rest of us, it's up for debate.
shrinking.
Good point. Okay, thank you, everybody. Good discussion. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Lord.
Thank you, Steve.
Amen. Bye-bye, Susan.
Bye.
Stephanie.